Hello, this is Stephen Whitfield with Drilling Contractor. Joining me today is Jade Strong, Senior Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer at Nabors, to talk about the ways in which environmental, social, and corporate governance, or ESG, has become a larger consideration for the drilling industry, and how companies can develop or refine their ESG programs. Ms. Strong previously gave a talk on this topic at the 2021 IADC Sustainability Conference and Exhibition. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this question. What are some of the criteria that organizations can use to evaluate the maturity of their own ESG programs?
I don't think there's a perfect maturity model out there to measure ESG within an organization. However, there are a few elements that an organization consider in terms of measuring maturity. Some of them may include items like responsibility, oversight, objectives, materiality assessments, standards, and maybe testing assurance. The one area I really want to focus on is the materiality assessment. So when you think about materiality assessments, they are really the assessment that the organization has to measure enterprise risk in a systematic way. So when I say enterprise risk, you may be measuring items such as talent management, bench strength, external regulations, or just the risk of the overall macro environment, which we don't have much control over. Then taking the results of this risk analysis to define which areas are considered material, and then you address them from the perspective of your organization.
You mentioned previously that there are three principles that organizations can use to guide the development of their ESG programs. I thought we could take a look at each of these in some detail. The first principle you mentioned is knowing where your organization is going. Can you talk about some of the considerations that might come with this? What does this entail?
So knowing where you're going isn't as simple as it sounds. So I highly recommend really digging into the company and the organization to see where you are. This is probably more important when it comes to environmental dimensions, specifically the emissions. Setting lofty goals around emissions that you're not confident you will have the necessary tools to achieve, it's sort of like taking a shot in the dark and not knowing what you're really shooting at. So because we're measured by what we disclose with ESG, we have to really be transparent and honest about what we're putting out there for everyone to see.
Second principle you mentioned is around knowing who is coming with you on the ESG journey. You said that a successful ESG program requires the collaboration of leaders, stakeholders, and subject matter experts. Can you talk about the roles each of these stakeholders play?
Yeah, I strongly believe to be successful through this journey, we need to have executive leaders to be committed. And even better is when the board of directors are engaged, because they can add real value since they have a different level of experience that can really guide us towards best practices. And just like any change management initiative, communication is key. If we don't communicate openly with all stakeholders, we lose the ability to learn from others, and worst case, if we aren't talking openly, our stakeholders can only create their own stories. And why allow that if we can tell our own story?
Lastly, you suggested that companies should be aware of ESG as a long-term commitment. What are the key things that they need to remember as they embark on the ESG journey?
You know, if you've been in this industry for a while, I think you could compare this to safety and how safety evolved in our industry. Thinking of ESG, specifically the E for drilling contractors, will likely mirror the same pattern of safety. So just like safety, we implemented change management efforts from understanding why it's important to gaining commitment from the top, and then focusing on the mid-level supervisors. So it's at this level that is what I usually call the linchpin of the organization, because they have the power to push information down and then also communicate it up. Although we have much of the S and G down in the industry, since we've been doing it for quite some time, enhancing the E will take time to communicate what we will report as an industry.
Well, Ms. Strong, thanks again for giving us your insight in this area. Sustainability is shaping up to be a key driver in the industry, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about companies' ESG programs. So we appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for visiting Drilling Contractor.